Okay, this is the third video of Canal versus Capablanca, played in 1929. It is the longest game I've covered so far. Seems like I can get through about 20 moves in a video. So I just covered Black's 42nd move of Rook to G1, keeping behind the White's pawns. The bishop comes to E4, with the idea now the pawn can come to C6 protected, also protecting the f-pawn. Rook to C1, threatening to capture the pawn. White just moves it up to C6. Now the rook comes to C3. Really, it looks like Black is just cutting off the various squares that the bishop can go to, while it's also attacking the pawn. So it's maximizing its effectiveness on C3. And now, how does also putting Black into somewhat of a zugzwang, sort of like what White is running out of good moves to make. So let me just show you, how should White proceed? Well, if it proceeds, let's say King to F5, then Black just plays Rook to C5 check. The King has to come back, and then the King comes up. If you don't know, that's one of the things that Black wants to do, is get its kings up, moving up and over to the king's side. So it wants to start to move the king over to this side. And now, what moves are there? Probably the king's going to come back, and then F5 is going to probably win it for Black. What other moves does Black have in this position? Could play D5 to stop the king from moving forward. They're coming to E6, but then Rook to C5. And obviously, if the rook just goes back, we have the same variation as the last variation. And so let's try something else for White. Let's say White tries King to E4. Then Black just plays F5. And now the king, obviously if the king goes away from the bishop, it's lost. So the king to D4. And then Black has this sweet move of Rook takes bishop, king takes rook, and then F4, breaking through. Obviously, if the pawn captures or moves up, this h-pawn rolls forward, so that doesn't work. So instead, White chose just to jettison the pawn, probably for activity. So C7, rook takes C7, bishop to D5 to prevent Black from playing king to E6. And now for the continuation of the game, it's going to be a little dance of this bishop is going to try to keep the king from advancing over to the king's side, and Black's rook's going to try to harass it. So rook to C5, bishop to A2. Where else is it going to go? Rook to B5, preparing to harass, just putting it on a better square and preparing to harass the bishop. King to E3. Obviously, if the king comes to E4, Black just plays this F5 move. King to E3. Rook to A5, chasing the bishop again. C4. Like I said, the bishop always wants to be looking at this square as long as possible. Rook to C5, and finally, it's going to have to go back to bishop to A2. It finally decides that it's just going to go to A6, and now the king comes up, and now White's going to try to give up a fight. It's going to come to F4, trying to prevent the king from coming up and in. Rook to C3. Once again, limiting the squares the bishop can go to, and also attacking the pawns. Bishop to F1. F5. This way the king can sort of come this way and down around. Bishop to a6. The bishop's just vacillating. Doesn't really have a good square. The king can't move. White's having trouble. It's like sometimes if it makes a wrong move, it's going to lose. King to f6. Here comes the king around. The bishop tries a new diagonal. Now black plays rook to c4 check, forcing the king back. King to e3. Now the king comes up to g5. Now white will play king to f2, bringing the king hopefully around to somewhere where it can help prevent any of these a pass pawn by black. Obviously a promotion is going to happen over on this side of the board. No good to bring the king to the middle or to the queen side. f4, king to g2, f5, and actually white resigned in this position because black is going to get a pass pawn, and probably the continuation would be, let's see, probably king to h2, f takes g3 check, king takes g3, h4 check, king to h3, rook to c3. And on the bishop moves, it just has to protect the pawn on f3. King comes to f4. Looks, wow, giving up a pawn, but due to king to h4. But then here's where it ends: is that rook takes f3, bishop takes f3, king takes, f3 on all those, and then that's an easily won game by black. So that is the game between Canal and Capablanca.